a smidgen of prestige. So what did that mean in practice? That meant that if you were, as I was, as my wife was, reasonably good at subjects like English and history, go to law school. Let's say you're better at math and science. What do? Go to medical school or get an engineering degree. And even in that economy, okay, which is the early 1970s, okay, before globalization, before the internet, even in that very buoyant economy, if blood grossed you out, your verbal skills were a little shaky, you could still go and get a job as an accountant. But if you think about, let's think about those professions for a moment. One accountant just walked out of the room. Well, if you think about those professions for a moment, okay, think about those professions. Accountants and lawyers and engineers, but more important than that, think about the abilities. This is the key here. The abilities at the heart of those professions. Those were the abilities that mattered most. Those were the abilities that got you ahead in your career. Those were the abilities that organizations were demanding. Those were the abilities that in some sense even fueled the entire macroeconomy. Well, my argument is that those abilities still matter, but they matter less. Those engineer abilities, those lawyer abilities, those accountant abilities, they still matter, but they matter less. And a different set of abilities matters more. And there's a way that I've chosen to explain this. Now, I'm a writer, and one of the ways that people like to torture writers, and there are many, is to tell them that a picture is worth 1,000 words. But good writers, and I would argue good business people, know that while a picture is worth 1,000 words, sometimes a metaphor is worth 1,000 pictures. A picture may be worth 1,000 words, but a metaphor is often worth 1,000 pictures. And I think that there is a metaphor that explains what's going on in the economy, in careers, in business today. And the metaphor is this. This is a brain, a human brain, a model of a human brain. Same size and weight of a brain. See, it sort of fits right here. Now, tempted as I am to give you a little mini lecture on neuroanatomy, I'll resist, and instead point you to probably the main, most distinguishing topographical feature of this brain, of your brain, of my brain, of everybody's brain. Running down the center of this brain, you see right here, is a Mason-Dixon line, cleaving this brain into two equal halves, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Now, many of you have probably heard about left brain this and right brain that over the years, and a lot of what you've heard is garbage. This is one of those ideas where the popularization of the idea has galloped far ahead of the science behind it. But in the last 5 years especially, the science has caught up, and we know, thanks to functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRIs, brain scans, we know an enormous amount about how our brains are organized. We're barely beginning to understand our brains, they're so complex, but we do have a sense at a very broad level of how our brains are organized. And there is, it turns out, this very elegant, very efficient division of labor in our brains. Our brains have different departments that carry out different functions. The left hemisphere deals with tasks that are logical, linear, sequential, analytical. Okay, make sense? This side of the brain, the right hemisphere of the brain, not better, not worse, just a different department. It deals with tasks that are more artistic, more empathic, more about synthesis rather than analysis, more about the big picture, more about context rather than text. There you have it. 50 years of neuroscience in 60 seconds. Now, here's where the metaphor comes in. It used to be that these abilities mattered most. The logical, linear, sequential, analytical, SAT, spreadsheet, zero in on the right answer abilities. These were the ones, metaphorically, that used to matter the most. Last century, machines replaced our backs, our muscles. This century, software is replacing our brains. But what part of the brain can software replace? The artistic, empathic, inventive side? Not yet. Or the logical, linear, sequential, rule-based side. So you now see certain kinds of white-collar professions, white-collar functions getting nibbled and soon gobbled by automation. Let me give you some examples from the field of law. You want to get an uncontested, you're saying you're in Boston, you want to get an uncontested divorce in Boston, it costs you $2,500 to go to a lawyer. But an uncontested divorce is very simple, right? No one's arguing about anything. What does a lawyer in an uncontested divorce do? Sends the bills. Well, okay, see, this is the benefit of my legal education, because I know that a lawyer, the first thing a lawyer in an uncontested divorce does is try to make it contested. But leaving that aside, for a moment, you're right, it's just filling out paperwork, right? It's routine work. What happens to routine work? We ship it overseas, or we reduce it to lines of code. So now in this great country, you have a choice. You can go to that lawyer for $2,500, or you can go to online to completecase.com for affordable divorce solutions, where you fill out, a couple people writing down the URL right over there. If you fill out the form yourself, they send it to a lawyer who checks it over, and you get yourself a divorce, an uncontested divorce, for $249. Now, that's a great deal, but think about being the lawyer doing that routine white-collar work. You got a competitor charging 90% less. You can even go online. For those of you who are online, you can go to one of CompleteCase.com's competitors, which is 123divorceme.com. Check it out. You can buy... I like the little smiley face right here. Check it out. Go online right now. Check it out. It's a real place. I think it's actually $239 there. No joke. You can buy a $14 piece of software that will help you write your will. So you go to a lawyer for 2 hours rather than 10 hours. And then think about accountants. Now, accountants right now, in labor markets of this moment, 2007, accountants should be basically sending thank you letters to Congress for Sarbanes-Oxley. Because Sarbanes-Oxley is basically the Accountant Full Employment Act, at least until the programmers figure out how to automate compliance with that. But at level of personal accounting, a lot of that work has already disappeared. You had 1 million tax returns done in India last year, and people went nuts over that. Lou Dobbs, oh, this is terrible. Maybe the world's worst Lou Dobbs impression, but forgive me. But you have 21 million Americans do their taxes on TurboTax. Nobody says that this is the death of the American middle class. I bet a third of you did your taxes on TurboTax. Any of you do your tax on TurboTax? Well, that's a pretty good guess. See those people back there, everyone with their hands up? You are the people with accountant blood on your hands. That is the accountant job killer. So you stack this all up, abundance, Asia, automation, and it's tilting the scales, making these left brain abilities necessary but not sufficient. The right brain ability is the first among equals. Let me just talk 30 seconds about this room emptying chart, and then we'll wrap up. This is a pattern in thinking economies here. We've seen this before. Think about this. We began in the agriculture age. We didn't really begin there, but to start the agriculture age, the age of farmers. What happened? This axis is time, by the way, and this axis is affluence, globalization, and technology. We began as farmers, okay? What happened? People got richer, so they wanted things beyond food. Technology improved, so we could grow more food with fewer people. Globalization gradually took hold. We could import food. Boom! Those nudge us into a new era, the era of factory workers, the industrial age. What happens then? Same pattern. We get richer. We want things beyond mass-produced goods. Technology improves. We can create more stuff with fewer people. Globalization takes hold. We can import mass-produced goods at a cheaper price. Bam! Move us into the new age, the age of knowledge workers, as Peter Drucker famously called it, the information age, the SAT age, the spreadsheet age. What happens? The same pattern. It's Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4. The same pattern. We get richer, so we want things beyond information and data and mundane services. We want customized, aesthetically pleasing kinds of services. With Asia, we begin to import knowledge work from other places, and we automate knowledge work, moving us into the conceptual age, the age of creators and empathizers. Here's the punchline. To make it today, you have to be able to do work that's hard to outsource, hard to automate, and that delivers significance along with utility. Hard to outsource, hard to automate, and that delivers significance along with utility. That puts a premium on these kinds of capacities, and for a whole host of reasons, our education system is woefully out of sync with that. Let me wrap up by conceding that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Here's my room emptying chart. I refuse to get rid of it because I'm a left-brain guy. But my counselors have told me, Dan, if you want to talk about right-brain thinking, you have to present this thing more in a more visual right-brain way. So as a concession to them, here is basically the evolution of economies in a single image. We began as primates. Then we became farmers. And Lee, I know, I'm skipping some history here, okay? Just cut me some slack. Then we became factory workers, knowledge workers, and today creators and empathizers, people who can use the right brain, people who are empathic, people who have storytelling capabilities, people who have a design sensibility. Those hard to outsource, hard to automate, significance-based abilities are the ones that are most important in the economy today. I think that those abilities are actually a fundamental part of being human, and I think that the more we deploy those abilities, which are now valued in labor markets, the greater human impact we're going to have. Thanks.